Welcome to Embodied Art Studio. I'm Michelle Baker, the owner, and I'm just going to go over the basics of watercolor painting with you right now. You want to start with an apron. We've got ours hanging right by the door because paints can stain your clothes. So this is going to help keep you protected before you come over and start getting into the paint. You're also going to want a palette. Palette's just a name for what's going to hold your paint. What we have here for the watercolor paints are these nice little cup kind of palettes, and you're going to see why that's going to be handy for the watercolors in a minute. We use these little tubes of the paints. These are our watercolor paints. They're so cute. You're always going to want a bucket of water. We have towels underneath of those. You can grab a paper towel as well. It's always handy to have one of those. And then we have appropriately labeled watercolor brushes so that the acrylic painters aren't getting their paints into these nice soft brushes that are just for watercolor. And when you're going to get your paints, you actually want to squeeze your paint to the side of the little cup, and I'll show you why in a moment. But notice how I didn't put it in the little bowl part, I put it right next to it. So that's how you're going to begin getting your paint, and you really don't need a lot when it comes to watercolor. A big part of learning to paint is actually learning about your medium and what you can expect from it. Watercolor painting it actually goes in a certain order where you begin with the most translucent layers of your colors and you let those dry, and then you build up more and more opaque layers over time. That means that when we go to mix our paint, we're actually going to want to add water to it right away, and that is why we put the paint next to the little cup so that we can put water in the bowl and then bring over just a little bit of paint and swirl it together to get that very transparent layer that we want to begin our painting with. And just notice the difference. This is the acrylic paint. Here's the watercolor of the first layer. It's very, very light. And so there's this gentleness to watercolor. Not that you can't get to deeper and more bold colors, but you start with the lightest version and you work your way forward. When you're painting, you are always going to want to put your brush in water when you're not using it, and ideally wash it out right away as well. We don't want to let our brushes sit out with paint on them because it isn't a way of taking care of the brush. It can start to dry on there and get stuck in the bristles, and that's going to affect your painting with the brush and just how long the brush is going to last for you as well. When it comes to a size of brush, you just want to think bigger for bigger areas, and obviously when you're getting into that little detail work, giving yourself a much smaller brush is going to really make the detail work easier. Other than that, if you're painting something with edges and corners, a square brush is going to really help, versus something that's more rounded, you're going to want to use a rounded brush. Those are the basics of which brush to use, and then when it comes to more specific things like what brush do I use for trees or this or that, that's going to come up in your class, okay? With watercolor painting, you're going to be working on nice, thick watercolor paper, and there are two ways that you want to prepare before you're going to start to paint. One is to tape your paper down all the way around to the boards that we have here, and that's going to help keep the paper flat and not start to curl up because the water is getting it, the watercolor gets it wet, right? The other option is that you can get the watercolor paper all wet with a nice big brush, back side and front side. That will help keep it from curling up on you as well. And some of our students like to even do both. Last, I just want to talk about color mixing for a moment. We all learned this probably when we were like second grade, and you probably don't remember unless you have been painting recently. There are 3 primary colors, and primary means that you can't make them. You just have to have them in a bottle. And the primaries are red, yellow, and blue. They're like the parents. We need to have them to make some children, okay? And the child of red and yellow is going to be orange. So the color wheel is showing you this. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Because orange looks like red, except for it's lighter. Yellow brings it over into a lighter, brighter version of itself. So that's called a secondary color, is orange. And then take yellow and blue, they are gonna come together and make a child who is green, right? So yellow brings blue over into the more warm, yellowy side of the colors to make green. And lastly, blue and red are gonna come together to make purple. Now, it seems simple and straightforward when you look at the color wheel, and this is your friend, by the way. You wanna reference this when you're mixing. But it gets a little bit more complicated because there are many versions of reds and many versions of yellows and blues. So if you have a red and a yellow, they're going to come together and make one kind of child. The only difference you can make is how much yellow you put in or how much red you can put in. It's going to make it more reddish, it's going to make it more yellowish, but you're still only going to get one kind of orange from those 2 parents. So this is a common thing that frustrates students, is they'll try to make purple and they're like, I don't like it, I'm not good at mixing. And it's not actually true. It's that you're only going to get one kind of purple from this red and this blue. And if you don't like how they're coming together and adding a little more blue or a little more red isn't getting you where you want to be, you actually want to switch and get a different blue. And then you're going to have a different result. I just want to say I'm really excited for you to get more creativity into your life. It really is something that you're going to look forward to every week, especially here at MBodied, because you're going to walk in the door and we're going to all be happy to see you.